Georgia Bulldogs football right here on the Our Lads Football Network, Our Lads Football YouTube channel, as we preview the Georgia Notre Dame playoff game coming up at the Sugar Bowl. And it's less than a week away. Georgia will get their feet wet with the first 12-team playoff. Of course, Notre Dame's already done that with their win over Indiana last week. Just had the opportunity to talk to Kyle Kelly from blueandgold.com on the Notre Dame side of things. So this is a great opportunity to get an idea of what's going on from the Georgia side of things with Jed May from UGAsports.com. Jed, thanks for doing this again.
Oops, had to unmute myself. Thanks. Thanks for having me. It's it's a very exciting time. My first Sugar Bowl I'm going to be going to. So looking forward to it.
Yeah, as you can see, Jed has done the best that he can to make sure he can get this video done. He's into basketball. He's into the bowels of the basketball arena. So we thank him very much for figuring out how to get this done. Of course, you're going to be heading to the game. When are you leaving?
Sunday afternoon or Sunday morning, actually, not Sunday afternoon. Sunday morning, we're driving down. It's like 7 hours from about where we live. So, plenty of time. Got plenty of NFL to listen to out of the fantasy playoffs, so don't have to worry about that. So, and then we got a big media day on Monday with, I think, 50 players available, I think, and all the position coaches, and then head coach press conference on New Year's Eve, and then we kick this thing off on Wednesday night. Wednesday night.
Yes. Matter of fact, there's going to be some strange middle of the week action in college football the next couple of weeks with New Year's Eve on the Tuesday night, and then the 3 Wednesday games all spread out, with the Georgia Notre Dame game being the late one at 8:45 kickoff. Right now, that's the estimated time, Eastern time, of course. Then the following week, it's Thursday and Friday nights. So keep that in mind for the semifinals, and then on to the championship game. So Georgia did not have a game, so we don't have to talk about any of that. And of course, we did speak a few weeks ago prior to the championship game. So everybody wants to know. I'm not going to milk this or anything like that. So let's just get in right into the belly of the beast with the biggest story. This is it. Everybody wants to know about who in the world is Gunnar Stockton. What kind of a background does he have? If anybody is going to know the insides and outs of a young kid, a top recruit, it's going to be someone like you, Jed. So give us the skinny on one Gunnar Stockton.
Yeah, I mean, he's a little bit of a folk hero around in Georgia's for sure. I mean, his high school was probably maybe an hour from Athens, if even that far, and he set a bunch of records and everything like that. And just he's a legend, and he's a guy who came out of high school, was a very highly touted recruit, 5-star, I believe, on Rivals. And he's kind of just, I don't want to say faded into obscurity, but I mean, he hasn't really broken through yet. Obviously, 2022, his freshman year, Stetson Bennett was still here. Carson Beck was here in 23, and then you kind of thought it could be back to Stockton maybe. And then Beck comes back for this year, so then it's another year of just kind of waiting your turn and see what happens. So, but now obviously his opportunity's here. So he's a guy who his skill set is different than Beck's. He's more of a runner. He's more of a true dual threat. We saw a little bit of that in the SEC championship game, and I think he's a guy who the biggest thing for him is he's got to avoid the key mistakes. He played pretty well against Texas, all things considered. But then he throws that interception to nowhere in the fourth quarter that very, very, very easily could have cost Georgia the game, the SEC championship. They could have been playing that first round playoff game, and a lot of things could look different. So I think the biggest thing for him is understanding he doesn't have to do too much. He's got a good supporting cast around him. Just trust your offensive line, trust your running game, trust the receivers around you, and trust the defense to play good ball, and I think he'll be all right.
What does separate him, say, from Beck? Let's just talk about the comparison of those two quarterbacks. What can Gunnar do that might be an advantage for Georgia's offense?
Yeah, again, I think it's the design runs. I think it's he's a little bit more of a threat to keep it on zone read plays. Matter of fact, it wouldn't shock me. And again, the wrinkle to that is if Gunnar Stockton gets hurt, then you're really in trouble at quarterback. So, but I think it wouldn't shock me too early in the game see him keep it on one of those zone reads, because if nothing else, you make the defense have to think about it, and that could open up the rest of the running game. Which the running game performed pretty well in that second half against Texas. So he can design run, get sweeps, zone reads, that kind of stuff. I think he's just a confident guy that people believe in. And I think, you see this even in the NFL, you see it in college. Like, if you are on a team where the quarterback situation is rough and it just permeates through the entire team, it brings everybody down. Nobody believes, body language is bad. And I don't think that's the case here. I think people believe in Gunnar Stockton. They've seen him in practice for 3 years now, as hard as that is to believe. The defense has gone against him every day. The offense has caught passes from him. Georgia does a good job of rotating in and giving guys reps with the ones on occasion. So it's not like he's never thrown to any of these guys before. So I think people believe in him. And I think he's a confident guy that people want to follow. And in a situation like this where everybody has to kind of elevate their own game a little bit, I think that's huge that everybody's got that level of belief in him.
No question that, like you said, the players around him got to make things as easy as possible for Stockton or any young quarterback, any inexperienced backup, and it's no different. The Georgia running game nationally is still pretty weak. Let's just put it out there. I mean, it's 99th in the country, but the numbers have gotten better recently, including, of course, the production from the championship game. Etienne had a really nice game. Notre Dame's defense is one of the better defenses in the country, but they're much better in pass defense than they are even without Morrison. But now they've lost Riley Mills, and that is a huge loss. I mean, that's their best defensive lineman. I know Cross came into the season as the top prospect, but Mills has had a really good season, and now he's out. That has to be something that Georgia is going to want to take advantage of. And that's, I honestly can't see any way that Georgia wins this game unless they get a really good game from both of their running backs.
Yeah, for sure. And again, like you said, they performed well in that second half against Texas, which, if you're just looking at it, if you're Texas, you would think, okay, backup quarterbacks in, we are going to make sure we stop the run first and make him beat us through the air. And Georgia was still able to run the ball a little bit. So, Georgia's got a very good offensive line who has now been able to get healthy over the past 3 weeks. Just off the top of my head, I don't think Notre Dame has seen an offensive line close to what Georgia's got. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think so. So,
no.
They're a unit that I think takes pride. And again, an offensive line at halftime at the SEC championship, Kirby Smart even said after the game, he's like, I challenge those guys to run the ball and help out Gunnar. And they did that. And I'm sure that message is going to be hammered home again in the lead up to this one. So, Riley Mills, that's huge. I think a Georgia offensive line that probably had a little bit of an advantage over Notre Dame defensive line anyway, now even has that much bigger of an advantage. So, you establish the run game, open up play action, which is huge for a young quarterback making his first start. And see where you go from there. But I expect Etienne. Etienne's had the rib injury for weeks, and now you've had a few weeks to kind of not take as many hits and let those heal up a little bit. So I think Georgia's going to really look to establish the run, and I wouldn't be surprised, honestly, if they had one of their better rushing games of the season.
Talk about the flip side. Of course, Love is next year is definitely going to be on the short list for Heisman candidates. After the season he's had this season. But of course, Gentry's been overshadowed everybody that you kind of lose track of some of the other really good backs. And Love is one of them. He might even be the top running back in the nation next year. What do you think about Georgia's defense going up against? Because that's where Notre Dame might say to themselves, just like Georgia's saying, well, if we're going to win, this is our strength. We have an offensive line that's gaining steam down the stretch. This is our strength of our team. We're a power running team, and we're just going to go at it against anybody. And that's how Notre Dame is going to win football games. So, what do you think about that matchup on Georgia's side?
Yeah, Notre Dame's always got a good offensive line, right? That's just that's just how it goes. But I mean, I think the thing with them is they've got such a diverse running game because you throw Riley Leonard in there too. And that's something that has given Georgia problems, is not even scrambling as much as just designed quarterback run. You saw how much success Georgia Tech had with that. And it's interesting when I was watching the Notre Dame Indiana game and hoping it would be a more competitive game than we got. I kept waiting. It did seem like to me that Riley Leonard had that many design runs called for him, and I wonder if at some point in that first half, Notre Dame was like, "Look, we know what we've got coming. We can win this game without running
Yeah.
Riley Leonard a lot. Let's save some stuff and not put it. I mean, there's a lot on film already, but let's save some hits on Riley Leonard at least." So, if you focus too much on Riley Leonard, then Love beats you. Focus too much on Love, then Riley Leonard beats you. So I think the biggest thing for Georgia is discipline, staying in your gaps, setting the edge, all that other uh, cliche coach speak stuff. And again, it's something that Georgia struggled with. I mean, just to be as blunt as you can about it, that hasn't exactly been a super strength, really, even going back to last year. So they're really going to need to hone in on those kind of things. Because if you don't, then yeah, Notre Dame can run all over you. And then Riley Leonard, we don't really know as much about Gunnar Stockton, but Riley Leonard's a guy who can make you pay off hard play action, extending plays, that kind of stuff.
No, I mean, that's a great point. Terrific point. Terrific comparison, Haynes King. Because, yeah, I mean, they had their way for most of the game. Just looking at the King stats, passing, I mean, which opened up obviously because of the running game. He had over 300 yards passing, 2 touchdowns, and then 110 on the ground rushing, 3 rushing touchdowns. So he was the dude in that game. Now, I don't know. I know Leonard has got more name recognition, but I honestly think King and that offense it might be a little bit better in what they do with King. Not a better offense, but I just think what they do with King is a little bit better. But that doesn't mean that Leonard, like you said, they're not going to pick that up and try to emulate, because they think if any team can emulate what Haynes King did with Georgia Tech, you would think it's Notre Dame and Leonard.
Right. And it was interesting because after the game, because Haynes King had the shoulder injury and you weren't really sure what you were going to see from him. And after the game, Kirby Smart was essentially like, we had some calls against Georgia Tech that we haven't used since like triple option Georgia Tech. So it basically sounded like they came into the game not thinking Haynes King would do much, if at all, through the air. And he was able to stretch the field. He had good zip on the ball. So basically caught everybody by surprise. Riley Leonard is not catching anybody by surprise in terms of his ability to throw the ball. So do you have a more, well-rounded or I guess you're going to be prepared for Riley Leonard to throw the ball, whereas it seems like Georgia wasn't really as honed in on Haynes King being able to stretch the field. So it's coming, but you got to stop it. I think that's the thing, because Notre Dame, is probably again, Georgia Tech has some really good receivers, but there's definitely not a skill talent drop off at nothing else. They're equal, if not. I'm sure Notre Dame's probably got a little bit of an edge there.
No, you're right. I mean, I think actually Georgia Tech probably does have a better 1-2 punch with Singleton and Rutherford. That's been the weakness of Notre Dame this year, is trying to find that receiver in their game, that go-to guy. Collins is a nice player and Faison had a nice playoff game, but they're not even Singleton or Rutherford. So, but still, they're good players. It's a good team, very good team, much better offensive line than Georgia Tech. Maybe I don't want to say much, because Georgia Tech, I mean, they know how to block as well, and they've got a coach who knows how to teach those kids. And look, it could have just been a matchup thing, but I just think it's a great point. And if anybody wants to, if they want to draw up the, how do we go up against this Georgia defense? Well, that's the only game film you probably need. Give me that Georgia Tech game film, and let me see what I can do. All right, so give me some. If you had to pick a player, because I know Notre Dame doesn't have the most explosive guys offensively as far as in the passing game, and Georgia, as we all know, they've had big problems this season with their receivers and the drops, and nobody's really been able to step up for the McConkey or the Bowers role. But if there is a guy, is it the obvious choice? Is it the Arian Smith or the Lovett, or is there maybe another guy on the depth chart, that could be like a sneaky guy? Look, just like Gunnar, because Gunnar, he's probably throwing the ball a lot to guys that also aren't like the big players on the team. So maybe those guys are going to get on in the action, and Gunnar's going to feel comfortable with some guys that we're not used to seeing out there making big plays in the receiving game. Is there one of those guys we should be keeping an eye on?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's Dom Lovett, because I think there's been times, especially later in the year, where it's just like he's been invisible. Like he just is gone. I don't know if it was the Tech game or maybe it was SC championship, but he didn't have any targets through the first half. And it's just like it's not like Georgia's rotating in. Like they rotate in, but Dom Lovett's still your frontline guy, not getting any targets. So like I think and even when he does is targeted, a lot of them are right at the line of scrimmage, these quick pop screens and stuff like that. So do you get him down the field a little bit more? And then I think Oscar Delp, because like he's caught touchdowns, but he hasn't really like had a big game. It's like those fantasy football games where like your guy puts up 8 fantasy points, but it's one reception for 10 yards, but it's a touchdown. Like, I wonder how much you look to Delp. And really, Delp and Gunner came into the same class. So they're guys who have known each other for a long time. So
Okay.
do you look to him more as a, even 6 or 7 targets as opposed to 2 or 3 targets?
Sure.
And same could be said for Lawson Lucky and Ben Urosic as well. But I just think this isn't a game where Nitro Tuggle, the freshman, had a couple nice catches against Tennessee, but that was more of an injuries thing. Like I personally, I don't think Kirby Smart is the type to just okay, we've had 2 weeks and now we're gonna throw all these freshmen in. I think they're gonna stick with the guys who got him here.
Sure.
I think you need more out of Don Lovett, and I think you could get more, I guess, more consistently out of Oscar Delp, maybe.
And speaking of the passing game, I'm not sure we're going to see a whole lot of success on either side, just based on the fact that there's a lot of talent in the secondary for both teams. Again, as I mentioned, Notre Dame and their passing defense, and we know Georgia, of course, also has some really top players back there. But on Georgia's side with Stockton, you talked about his athleticism, and that's something that he could bring to the table. Is there something in his passing game that can make him a difference maker, whether it's arm strength or touch or accuracy? What is it about Gunnar Stockton in the passing game that makes him a potential difference maker?
I think it could honestly just be as simple as confidence. I think he's a guy who he's going to try to make plays. You've got to rein that in a little bit sometimes, but I just think he has belief in himself, and I think again, it's not exactly the same. But you look at Jameis Winston as a suffering Browns fan. You watch Jameis Winston, and okay, he throws a pick. Okay, you come to the sideline and figure it out, and then you get back on the field and try it again. I think Gunner's the type who has enough belief in himself to, if he does make that mistake, it's not going to crush him mentally for the rest of the game. So and that's something we've seen even from Carson Beck. He would get in these spells where it's just like he'd start off okay, and then it's just a quarter, the second quarter against Alabama, the second quarter against Florida, didn't start out hot against Tennessee. Just like things just would crumble, and then it would get fixed. But you put yourself in a hole, or you let a team hang around, or whatever. So I think Gunner has that mentality. I mean, it's in his name, right? He's a gunner. He's a gunslinger. So I think he's got the confidence that you need to take over and play well in a situation like this.
All right. Speaking of injuries and Beck, is there anyone else on Georgia who is dealing with an injury situation that might affect them in the game?
Yeah, it's just like all year. It seems like there's injuries are running back. Both Roderick Robinson and Branson Robinson seems like have been dinged up in practice. We haven't really gotten anything much on that, but it seems like there's a chance Georgia could be without both of those guys. So then it's like a lot of the year you got Trevor Etienne, you've got Nate Frazier, the freshman, who really came on strong down the stretch, and you've got Cash Jones as your third down back. And then you're looking at freshman Dwight Phillips and Chauncey Bowens behind that. So I mean, the good news is again the guys who will be stepping up have got experience.
Yep.
But it's so on brand for the year that this Georgia team has had that you have these guys potentially go down and practice again. We haven't had any confirmation on that or anything, but it seems like Georgia could be without those guys. So
all right. Other than that, the rest of the marquee players seem to be ready to go.
Yeah, Trevor Etienne's getting healthier. It looks like they're going to get Christian Miller back on the defensive line, who was a big loss. Smile Mondo, who's been dealing with a foot injury, it's been back for the past couple games. You get him healthier. It's a lot of like not even just guys coming back, but just getting healthier and fresher and getting some time off. That helps everybody at this point of the year, even teams like Notre Dame who just get an extra week off. but yeah, it's Georgia's been so. I mean, offensive line guys have been playing through stuff. ETN, like I mentioned, receivers, just everybody's kind of been dealing with something. Which again, that's not just Georgia; that's every football team. But when you get 25 days off or whatever it is at this point in the year, that's huge for your entire roster.
It, we just we're at that point now in the season. A lot going on with the transfer portal. Is there anything like? And again, I know most fans are zeroed in on playoff games if they're in it, but there is always going to be transfer news for every team. Is there anything big on the horizon or anything big that has happened so far regarding Georgia and the transfer portal?
I mean, I think the biggest, as far as the roster, what the playoff could look like. Julian Humphrey is a corner who transferred to A&M. I think he put his name in the portal the day after the SEC championship, maybe if I remember right. And he's a guy who, it's kind of been Dalen Everett and Julian Humphrey and Daniel Harris at corner. And Julian Humphrey, I want to say it was the first drive against Tennessee. He was called for a pass interference, set Tennessee up with, I don't know, first and goal or first and whatever. Didn't play the rest of that game, was replaced by Daniel Harris, and hadn't really played a ton the rest of the year. So it seems like he'd been passed on the depth chart. He's a guy who was really fast and is kind of sort of, he's had good moments, he's had bad moments, and is now, I believe he's committed to Texas A&M. So, but that's more of a depth thing. If there is an injury at corner, Georgia is probably going to have to turn to a freshman and Ellis Robinson, who, is a 5-star. He's been here at our campus for a year now, so you can't really say he's a freshman, but a guy who hasn't had a ton of at least meaningful game reps. So
Sure.
But other than that, nothing too significant at this point.
Okay.
But again, you look at that secondary, and that's one where it could make an impact.
And no big news regarding players coming into Georgia for any major position at this point.
No, Georgia hadn't gotten anybody. They've looked at some receivers that have gone elsewhere. They looked at Singleton from Tech. They looked at Dane Key from Kentucky, who went to Nebraska. They looked at Zechariah Poyser as safety from Jacksonville State, who went to Miami. So the biggest one, at least right now, as of what day is it? Friday the 27th. They're looking at the Branch brothers from USC, Zechariah and whatever their names are. The Branch brothers from USC, the receiver and the safety. They had them on campus for a visit. But yeah, Georgia hadn't gotten a transfer guy. They've been involved with a lot of guys, but haven't gotten any across the finish line. So we'll see.
Well, like I said, I mean, most fans, that's something for after the season's over. They always like to hear the news, but it's try to win a championship since you have that opportunity. And before I let you go, speaking with Kyle, one of the nightmare situations for Notre Dame might be if Notre Dame is down in the game and they need to drive the field and set up a game-tying or game-winning field goal because they've had all sorts of problems this season in the kicking game. What do you think about Georgia in that same situation?
Yeah, I think Georgia's got faith in Peyton Woodring. I think they would feel comfortable trying a kick from mid 50s, probably 52 to 55. Trying to think off the top of my head. I don't think they've had a kick blocked this year. They've done a pretty good job in protection. So
Notre Dame's had 4.
Yeah, so that's definitely the X factor, but no, I mean Woodring's a good kicker. He's a solid guy.
Yes.
He had a bit of a rocky start as a freshman last year, and has just pretty much been nails ever since. So, you're in a dome, obviously, so you've got ideal conditions. I remember he tried one at the end of the half against Tech that was way short, but it was going straight into the wind, so that wasn't really a fair fight. So. But yeah, I think Georgia feels confident in his. You don't hear the name of the kicker a lot,
sure,
and usually that's a pretty good, kind of like an offensive lineman. If you don't hear their name a lot, you're in pretty good shape. So Georgia feels confident in their kicker and their the protection around them, I guess, which seems like it's been a problem at Notre Dame, from what I understand.
Yeah, and look, this is one of those things. You get into a game that's really close to handicap. I mean, the line is almost even. It's one of those things where you're probably going to see. Turnovers will be big, maybe even bigger than in other games because of the fact you don't anticipate this is going to be a high scoring game. These are not passing offenses right now. So everything is going to matter. And that's where special teams can come into play. And that could be a big advantage also because Georgia has one of the better combinations between kicker and punter. Thorson being, of course, a second-team All-American. So maybe this is exactly what Georgia needs in order to kind of get that little edge. Because again, I anticipate a very close game, sort of the way Georgia and Texas has been playing this year. That's kind of what I'm looking for in this game. I think it's a close game. Maybe there will be turnovers, but I don't know how much you're gonna be able to take advantage of that points wise because the other defenses are so good. So that's what I'm looking for. What is your prediction? Have you come up with a prediction yet, or are you still kind of since you're about a week away, you still haven't really put it all together yet?
Yeah, haven't nailed it down yet. I do think this is a game that Georgia's going to be able to win. I think they will have, an advantage on both lines of scrimmage because I don't think Notre Dame is a very good team and they are built kind of like Kirby Smart has complimented Texas on being built like an SEC team before they got into the league in the trenches. I think Notre Dame is kind of like that as well. But again, I don't think they've seen anything like Georgia's defensive line. And I don't think they've seen anything like Georgia's offensive line. So I think Georgia's going to be able to win the line of scrimmage on both sides. I think Georgia's going to win. I think it is going to be close. Probably I'll go 23-14. No, 23-17 within a touchdown for sure.
Okay.
But I think Georgia's going to be able to. And again, if this was, middle of the season, and Carson Beck gets hurt on Saturday and you're playing next Saturday, I think it's different. But when you've got this long of a time period to work with Stockton, figure out what he does well, I think that's a big break for Georgia.
Well, we're all going to find out exactly how Gunnar handles the situation, just like Gunnar's going to find out. And if he handles it well, that's going to put Georgia in a good spot. And then they'll be potentially off to the semifinals the very next week. And if that's the case, then hopefully we'll get an opportunity to do this again, Jed. So I really appreciate you. I appreciate you taking your time out and again, having to, huddle down here in the basketball arena. That's kind of cool. I like that. Is it practice or is there a game going on?
Well, there's a practice. The original plan was to go out on a media row or whatever. There was a practice going on. So hopefully next time we won't have buzzers going off.
That's all right.
I can't even imagine swear words and all kind of stuff going on back there. But
that's nice.
Anytime. Anytime. Thank y'all for having me.
You got it, Jed. Don't forget, we're going to have links in the description of this video. So check it out. You can, if you don't know where they are, you hit the more button. It opens up and you get all the links and you'll be able to find out how to track Jed for all his content. And that, of course, includes recruiting content and much more. So we'll hopefully be back again with Jed if Georgia wins. If not, I can't wait to talk to Jed again in 2025. Either way, because that means we'll be getting ready for another season, which is really all we live for. So, Jed, appreciate your time and good luck with the game next week.
Absolutely. Thanks, man.